I would keep an eye open on thinking that AI is going to solve every single problem that you have.
Customer service and how you care for your customers is always going to be very relevant. Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining another episode of the Talent Pieces podcast. Today, I have the honor of having with me Grace Maher, COO at OTR Solutions. Grace, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Carlos. I'm super excited to be here, and we've been trying to do this for a little while now.
It's been a busy summer, right?
Yes, very.
I think we started this conversation in May.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad that we made it, and I think I'm actually happy that we waited a bit to do this conversation because there's so much happening in your industry, in technology, that I think it will just make this conversation a lot more relevant. So everything happens at the perfect timing.
I completely agree.
So, Grace, before we get started, I usually like to share with our audience, who you are, what you do, and of course, what OTR does and who it's solving a problem for.
Yeah. What we do, OTR Solutions, is a freight fintech company. We originally started in 2011 as a factoring company. For those who don't know what that means, we essentially, drivers take freight from brokers. It's a pretty fragmented industry, meaning they're also quite fickle. They'll just take freight from whoever can give them, high-paying freight and keep them moving. The trucks actually work directly with freight brokers and shippers. And so, there might be this idea that like a carrier takes freight from the same person every single day, and that's not the case at all.
Right.
So once they deliver the load, they would typically send the POD, which is literally still to this day a piece of paper that goes with every shipment. It's your bill of lading. The receiver signs it. Yes, ABC Trucking delivered this. It becomes a proof of delivery. That POD then is what they send back to the shipper or the broker to get paid. Then they wait anywhere from 30, 45, 60 days to get paid. Well, because carriers take freight from multiple different brokers, shippers, they're not necessarily, and they're men and women behind a truck, right? What they do best is drive and move freight, not necessarily the back office accounting portion of, okay, I got to invoice this now. I got to bill it. Who am I sending it to? I want to bill for extra charges like detention or layovers or, whatever might be. And then I've got to get paid, and I've got to track that payment, and I've got to collect on that payment. And so most people don't realize that independent trucking companies, almost 60 to 70% of them use a factoring company. And essentially we go in, we purchase that bill the same day they deliver at a small discount. We pay them, the carrier, the trucking company, and then we go bill the broker or shipper. And we take on the responsibility of that, and we allow the carrier to keep moving. And in 2011, that's what we started, the company as. It was actually OTR Capital at that time. And we've since rebranded to OTR Solutions because we do so much more than that now. We have fuel cards. They save money at the pump. We have a trucking banking solution, and a lot of technology that helps carriers run their business because it's so much more than just factoring now, especially in 2025 as technology continues to evolve in a space that traditionally, when I first came in, had very little technology.
Zero technology, I bet.
Zero. There weren't really women in this industry, and there wasn't really technology. So the strides that this industry has made just in the 14 years that I've been here is pretty incredible.
I think it has grown a lot, and we're still talking about an industry which is the trucking industry that moves 75% of the freights across the United States. So
yes.
It's still as relevant today as it was, 20 years ago, and it will continue to be very relevant. And funny enough, while I was listening to you, I was trying to get ready for this podcast yesterday, and I was like, explain to me this like I'm a 5-year-old.
Yes.
And it was like, if you are having a lemonade stand, then you need the money for the next day to do more lemonade, to buy more lemons.
Right.
And if the payment terms with whoever is buying that lemonade, it's 30, 45, then you might eventually have some challenges with your cash flow, which is the problem that you're solving for the truckers, right?
Exactly. it is not necessarily this idea that the carriers live load to load, but it is the fact that trucking is so cash intensive. Insurance is incredibly expensive. The truck note, the diesel that they put in their trucks is very expensive. So they need cash to keep running. And it's not that they're bad at managing it, it's that they work with so many brokers and
Right.
shippers that pay on different terms that when that becomes unreliable and like, when am I getting paid because I have all these other things I have to cover, they can't afford to not know. And so they factor with, a company like ours, and keep their trucking company moving. And now, when I first came in, just to give you an idea, let's say the load is $100. They run a load from Atlanta to Atlanta and it's $100. We charge anywhere from less than 1% to honestly all the way up to 4%. And so, like, let's say it's a 3% rate. We're going to charge the carrier, $3 or $3. Yes, we pay them $97, and then we go bill the broker or shipper $100, and what we make on that is $3. I'd be like, well, that's really low, but when you're purchasing a lot of freight and you figure out how to do that at scale and how to process invoices and how to bill correctly and how to pay correctly, you run the business that way. So yeah.
I love something that you said the other day. I don't recall if it was in a video or in a LinkedIn post, which is we might not be the cheapest solution in the market, yet the amount of value that we can provide by having all these years and background of experience and all
Yes.
the ecosystem around it. Again, it's not just capital now, it's solutions. So it's not just, hey, we're going to help you getting your money faster, but also all the support that you have. And you mentioned some of those benefits. How does technology has played a role into that?
Yeah, and just to that point, like I have always said, we're not the cheapest in market, because if you ask, if you walk into a truck stop, fuel stop right now, and you say to any carrier, what do you know about factoring, or, why would you change factoring companies? The first thing they're going to say is rate. It's like, it's so much more than that,
Right.
though. And the reason why I say that, there's a reason why Walmart is the company that they are, and like, low prices and, people that serves the purpose when they need it to. But there's also a reason why people will pay a premium for certain products, because they recognize, like, I need the return on that. I need that to be something that I can be confident is worth the value. And so, we're not the cheapest in market, but we are insanely competitive. And as far as technology, we were the first factoring company to come out with a mobile app. We were the first factoring company to allow carriers to actually submit copies of the POD and get paid on them. People thought we were crazy. I mean, when I first came into this industry, the carriers were trip packing, which was like, you would go into the truck stop and there would be kiosks that had envelopes that you would put the PODs in, and then you could ship them, and they would be shipped overnight or in several days to a factoring company or to a broker. And that's how carriers got their PODs faster.
Wow.
Rather than just mail. They could also mail them themselves, like with a stamp and an envelope, and that's how they were getting paid. And so he says, like, this is crazy. Take a picture, send it to us, and we're gonna pay you on, and then send us the originals. Back then, we were even requiring that they still send them after the fact, of course. Today, we don't ask anyone to send us originals anymore, because it's kind of actually ludicrous. We were even doing it, 10 years ago. The load delivered and you have a proof of delivery, you don't actually need the original. But in 2011, brokers and shippers were not paying without that original POD in their hands.
Wow.
So if you lost that, like, you weren't getting paid.
And imagine all the amount of loads that you can handle. Not in a couple of, like, in a week. You can
Yeah.
do multiple in a day, depending on how close, you're moving around. That's a lot of paperwork.
It's a lot of paperwork. Technology's changed so vastly. I mean, even in how carriers find freight, load boards. They used to go into the truck stop. and look up at a TV screen that may or may not have loads. Now, today, all of that's on a mobile app. Different companies offer, different brokers have access to their loads right in their app. And so, the phone itself has become, again, just years ago, nobody even had a smartphone.
Yeah.
Truckers they were on a CB radio talking to each other. They were not using ELDs. ELDs are an electronic logging device. They used to log their hours of service because there are complaints around how much a driver can drive and, when they have to pull over and when they have to rest. And they used to do that on paper. Even in 2011, 2012, ELDs, electronic logging devices, where carriers would log their driving time and it would be monitored by the engine and the truck itself, they did not come into the industry until 2018. That's how recent.
That's very recent.
Yes. But as far as OTR, we have in recent years incorporated AI into the business greatly. We can talk a little bit about how we see AI evolving in the industry.
And that was kind of my next question in terms of, we're talking about a technology or an industry that recently embraced technology as early as 2018.
Yeah. And
now we're in this AI world where there's a lot more automation, but also a lot of ways where they can be supported through technology. So, how is this affecting your industry from either a fintech perspective or just the freight perspective?
Yeah, from a fraud perspective, it's incredible. Essentially, when we would get this paperwork, we would have to audit it ourselves. And that's sort of how I got into this myself. I had been an auditor for 5.5 years before I got into logistics. And so essentially with factoring, when you get this POD, you do want to verify that it's legit. You do want to verify that ABC Trucking did actually deliver this freight, because there's a lot of fraud in the industry where they'll create, fake carriers, fake loads, it's amazing the, sophistication of the fraud. And so, for years we would have to verify, and meaning somebody calls, somebody sends a POD that they just delivered this freight. We actually call the broker and say, hey, did ABC Trucking deliver this freight for you? They say yes. Did they deliver it for $1,000? Yes. Okay. Did you give them any fuel advances? Did you advance them anything on the load? No. Okay, thank you. Hang up the phone. We then feel confident we can pay the carrier, the $1,000 less 3%. And that's how we did business in the beginning. Fast forward to today, brokers just can't answer factoring companies' calls all day long,
Right.
They don't want to, and understandably so. So, how do we verify rates so that we can purchase invoices? How do we make sure that the POD that was sent is legitimate? How do we make sure that the rate con that was sent, meaning that's the contract between the broker and the carrier saying, you will run this freight, we will pay you $1,000. Every load also comes with a rate con. So we need those two things to pay. We run all of our documents through AI, machine learning, and NLP, natural language processing. And then we also use APIs to check and make sure that we can in some way solidify that the load did run with the broker or shipper with that carrier. And so there's multiple points of fraud detection where we're going, okay, do we see any anomalies with the rate con or the POD? Do we, can we back channel through an API, yes, this is the correct information. I can't share all of our secrets, but, this has gone from a very manual process in 2011 where we literally printed invoices out so that we could circle things and look at them, to now every single document we receive in seconds is run through our audit AI audit tool, and it surfaces to a human whether it detects anything wrong with it. And therefore, there are invoices that are clean and perfect and we're able to say this is good, approve it, or hey, we think we have a problem, and only those invoices are surfaced to a human to say, hey, you need to take a look at this and here's why. And it will tell us what it thinks is wrong with it based on all of the algorithms and rules that we've set, which is pretty amazing, to be at this place where not only are we buying better, but we're buying better than a human ever did because of these tools.
I love that because it definitely adds an additional layer on security and compliance
Yes.
and all risk prevention in many aspects, and how it still interacts with a human on the other side, which is, hey, this needs a final verification, and that's still relevant for having a human interaction, and how maybe high skilled talent can be a lot more relevant now in this AI era. Um, what will you advise to leaders that are looking to implement AI or that are considering that, especially in a high trust industry like yours? What should they be cautious about? We already talked about the good part.
Mm-hmm.
So what will you say they should keep an eye open on?
I would keep an eye open on thinking that AI is going to solve every single problem that you have. Right now, this idea that AI is, just this amazing lift. There's a lot of things that we can do to become more efficient that actually don't need AI at all. It's also really understanding that the value creation in going down the path of AI before you do something. There's a lot of great ideas out there, but not all of them actually require AI. What's the biggest lift, for the lowest amount of effort that you can get from AI? Also, be very open with your team about talking about AI. I think we've done a really great job of embracing AI in a sense where our employees don't feel like they're going to be replaced.
Right.
We're trying to make sure that they all understand. We're just trying to take the tasks off their plate that they don't need to be doing because they're mindless or they're monotonous and they're unnecessary, so that we can put things in front of them that that their expertise at this point and their ability to interact with a human, that's where the value comes from. We do not want our clients to feel like they're now only dealing with AI and bots. Part of OTR's, recipe for success has always been our service. Our Google reviews, our app reviews, our reputation in the industry on Reddit. I mean, we care about it all because money is personal. And when you're paying people, you need to get that right, especially the men and women who are moving freight all around our country that keep all of us. Like, we take what we do very seriously because we are helping thousands, upon thousands of drivers and trucking companies out there who are actually moving freight for our families. It's kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal. I love that you mentioned Reddit because even from a sales perspective, when I'm talking to potential customers, I always ask, like, are you aware of this Reddit thread that mentions A, B, C pain points and how, we can potentially solve them? But I love that, customer service and how you care for your customers is always going to be very relevant, even in this, chat GPT era that we're getting into.
Yeah.
So now that we're talking about, you're running and scaling a fast growing operation that has an AI component, and then how or what do you look for when building teams in an industry like yours?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was thinking about that as I was coming here today. We have always said it is like our culture is incredibly important from the team aspect of we can only achieve if we all are determined that we will achieve. I'm a big proponent of it's a we kind of deal. Like, it's not my team, it's not your team, it's our team. It's a we mentality, always has been. We've always, when we started this business in 2011, there were already several very established factoring companies in the space that had been here for decades. Like the largest of the largest factoring companies in the trucking and transportation space have decades on OTR. And we came into the industry and we were like, we are going to be an industry leading factoring company. And I'm sure people thought we were crazy. But we as a group collectively decided we're coming for nothing less than like top 3, top 2, and now we want to be the number 1 factoring company in our industry. So we look to hire people who are hungry, who have a team background. I used to say a sports background. I don't think that is necessarily as important, because I think being a part of a band, being part of a club, being part of something where you had to work cohesively as a group and take direction from a coach, whether it was your literal coach or the band director, or, whomever that is, but like that you have worked as a team before. You're incredibly personable. I don't think there's anything wrong with the people in the world that want to eat lunch at their desk by themselves and kind of come in at 8 and leave at 5 and clock in and clock out and not really interact. Those people are highly valuable to a lot of companies.
Yes.
But to OTR, it's a little different for us. We are highly interactive, highly collaborative. We never went fully remote. We were bringing people in even during COVID on a volunteer basis. If they wanted to come in, they could, and we still had about 45% in the height of COVID coming into the office. Obviously we had set up some, a lot of things around just keeping people safe at that time, because you didn't know, right? But for us, it's hiring people that want to succeed and feel like it's really fun to win together. And they almost have a competitive nature and that sort of thing, because if you ask anybody, at OTR, or maybe anyone who's moved on from OTR, like one thing, I think they would tell you, like, we grind, like we work really hard day in and day out.
Winners.
Yeah.
Love that. And I love it because there's 2 things that you've mentioned that have resonated the most. Is the first one is, how do you embrace AI without scaring your existing talent?
Mm-hmm.
By letting them know that this is not coming to replace them, it's coming to enhance them and kind of make their lives easier in many aspects. Their day-to-day a lot easier, and in a very effective way. The second thing that I did like the most is how you drive this growth by having a strong company culture. So, anything that you want to add on company culture, because I think that drives pretty much everything.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the other thing we did that I hadn't mentioned is we set up an AI ambassador committee within OTR, essentially asking employees to apply if they wanted to be a part of our ambassador committee. Why did we do that? We did that because we wanted employees across the company from any department at any level who are AI curious, who are using it in their personal lives, and who honestly can look at their role right now and go, I think we should be maybe utilizing AI in this way, to have a voice. And by doing so now, the company's embracing it. And also by doing so, we have an AI committee, which we had everyone apply who's interested. We had interviews. There were a lot of people who were just AI curious, but not necessarily using it. We were like, that's awesome. But we wanted a small group, and there's about 12 individuals across the company who were very AI, like they were using this in their daily life already.
The early adapters.
Yes, early adapters knew a lot about it, more than just even ChatGPT, which is amazing, but there are more platforms out there. And this team now is able to communicate with the rest of the company across different departments and say, hey, here's how we're thinking about using it, and we're a part of it, and we're helping build it, and we're bringing ideas in. And they're recognizing, like, no one's looking to replace anybody. We're only looking to figure out, how do we use it to take this team and be able to scale this team and be able to do double without having to, because it's a lot easier to manage 100 people or 200 people than 400 or 700 people.
Yes.
So if you can take a team that works really well together and like continue to grow with that, because you're now utilizing tools that help everyone be more efficient, like that's sort of, that's the ideal state.
Right. And it's very important, again, culture to help you drive AI, but also to drive that, we team
Yep.
effort and mindset. Now, one of the things that I was very curious about, because I read one of your LinkedIn posts where you were mentioning how important that in-office interaction is for the company culture. So, how has how have you successfully implemented nearshore talent into your culture, and what role have they played in helping OTR meet client demand and scale faster?
Yeah, when we decided to nearshore in 2018, I was probably one of the most skeptical because I do believe training is so important to what we do, especially operationally.
Right.
Like, nearshoring on a sales aspect or nearshoring, as a broker on a tracking, tracing, just calling in. Like, those are very straightforward. But from a servicing aspect in the factoring industry, you know, dealing with carriers and certainly about payments is kind of a big deal. You
Yeah.
need to know what you're doing. And, you know, um, I'm always gung ho for like, okay, let's try this, right? Fail fast, but always give it the best shot. And so I was certainly excited to try this, but I did not know how it would go. I will honestly tell you, they are an extension of our team. They are an extension of OTR. Again, I would say if you asked our nearshoring partner, what's different about OTR, they would probably say the interaction. A lot of times in nearshoring, you have a, office sort of manager and everything is funneled through that person
Right.
down to the team. We don't really treat it like that. We actually treat it like the employees within our nearshoring office are direct reports to someone back home here,
Right.
on our team. They are, we constantly have meetings. We keep them engaged on productivity. We give them accolades. We visit often. When we visit, we bring them things. We write letters. We acknowledge team members over Teams and Zoom when we have meetings. Like, we don't treat it differently. We absolutely immerse them. And when we even promote people within our corporate and Phoenix office, we'll encourage them if they get a nearshoring employee on their team. Hey, you need to have virtual coffees like every now, in the first few weeks. Like, you need to build a relationship. We're just super fortunate. Our nearshoring team is like critical to what we do. We absolutely love them. And again, that was one thing that the team might have thought here domestically. Oh, are they going to replace us all with near?
They're
No,
making everything
right?
nearshore now.
No, like I said, we've been doing that since 2018, and nobody looks at nearshoring as a threat. It's like this is a supplemental resource for who we are and what we're trying to accomplish. That's just super, super helpful. But we've continued to hire here as well.
I think what I love is they become an extension of your team. They complement your team, but they never replace your team.
Right.
And that's kind of a key for success, right? Because you have to kind of balance on where your workforce is and how the interaction is, but also treating them as part of your team. I think it's very, very important. And I'm talking here on the two sides. One, it's for the talent side on how much they will appreciate being part of a team that does feel like, hey, we're a whole big team and
Yeah.
not the LATAM team versus the US team. I think that's a great approach. And the other thing is, I recently learned this with one of my clients' experience, and it resonates to what you said. You visited the team, and I think as a U.S. company, it kind of helps you also understand, like, oh, this is the culture, this is what they like, and this is how we can drive more integration, more retention, and just more success overall, right?
Yes.
Because they will understand your culture, they will understand your vision on a different level than on a Zoom call. Goes back to kind of that in-person interaction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So, what advice will you give to other, COOs or operational leaders scaling across countries for the first time?
Invest in the training and invest in the team itself. And I also would say, for us, where we picked our nearshoring office was important. It was in the same time zone. It was a place we felt we could travel to. It was a place where we were able to send an employee for a couple months to stand up the office. It was a place that we felt like we would be able to travel to and send people, quarterly to check in as needed. And so I'm not saying, going into other countries where those options aren't available isn't a great thing. I think every nearshoring office and or geographical location serves a great purpose. There's reasons why you may want a different time zone so they're working overnight, when your team wouldn't otherwise be. But I think when you're thinking about this, it's don't start so small that it's like you don't know if it's really making a difference. But start small enough that then you can grow, invest in those people so that they can train other people and make sure that you're keeping, a handle on it. Like, I've never understood this idea of training slowly over time rather than invest in the right training up front and get these people going.
Build a core team.
Right. Build a core team that you can then build around. And that's been our recipe for success.
Oh, that's amazing. How do you feel the future of work playing for, high growth companies that are looking for that combination of both speed and quality, especially when nearshoring?
Yeah, speed and quality. It's all about the hiring too. I mean, I truly believe that that's where the nearshoring partner is critical, because they've got to help you get hired quickly when you need it, and they've got to get you hired quality. We do a lot of our own interviews. So, our nearshoring partner, obviously they do an initial interview, but then we re-interview all of the candidates ourselves. And we pick the people for our team. We don't just necessarily, someone's like, oh, we need 5 nearshore people, and oh, okay, I got them. It's like, no. We want to talk to them. We want to understand what they're looking for, and we want them to feel like they're a employee of OTR, not
Right.
necessarily an employee of the nearshoring partner, which might be different than the way other people think about it. But, our nearshoring partner has told us that we have the highest tenure of any portfolio company in there, or any
Wow.
company in their portfolio. And I'm like, that's not surprising to me.
I think this is very important. And I was making a LinkedIn article about this the other day, and how, in my personal opinion, the call center era is that the era where you get a team of 300 people that you have no idea who they are, but they are, doing the job, talking to your customer. It's long gone, and it's going to be replaced by, of course, kind of this tier 0, tier 1 AI interaction. But the other part is teams extensions, right? Like
Yep.
like a staff augmentation in every capacity, where you actually know who's coming to the team, but also they understand what is it that you want to drive, what type of success you want to drive with your customers, what's important for you and for your customers, rather than just having an office manager that will tell you, hey, today we're going to focus on call resolution. So as a last, you know, piece of advice, if I might say, like, if someone is listening right now and thinking about scaling their team, what's your one piece of advice that
Oof.
you'll give them?
Probably the most relevant piece of advice today, I would say, sales is not the most important department in a company. And my mentor taught me this, but sales is not the most important department in the company, but sales is the most important function of any company. And so when I think about operations, where I have sat for 14 years, and I've been told at times, that's a non-revenue head. And I think to myself, that couldn't be further from the truth, because operational support is so critical to keeping clients and retention and adoption of products as you grow and evolve. And I think, investing in people who are your greatest asset is so important, because every time you lose someone and you have to rehire, it's so expensive for the company, especially when you do what we do, where it's so the expertise around just trucking in general and compliance and claim issues and fraud and purchasing, and they're purchasing from so many different things, and and then you're also just dealing with carriers who, to be honest with you, I mean, these are men and women who are in a blue collar job, that have a lot of questions themselves, that need a lot of hand holding themselves. Like, AI is going to be incredibly helpful for us, and already has been. But the people part is so important. And, the sales of who you are as a company, what products you offer, and like how you're servicing. Like, servicing is a sales function.
Right.
It is. And so, I would tell anyone out there to make sure that, as much as we want to always think about how do we reduce costs, don't do it at this, in sacrificing service, because at the end of the day, when you can keep a client and you can keep an employee, like, you're better off tenfold than constantly churning and rehiring and retraining and trying to get, just spending more on your sales team to get more new clients that you're not going to keep. It's never made any sense to me, So yes, sales is critical, but so is the servicing of your clients.
Wow. Not sure what answer I was waiting for, but this is far better than what I was expecting.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for making the time for this conversation. I really enjoyed learning more about you, about OTR, and of course, your company culture, which I think it's fantastic.
Yes, and now you have to come by and visit, because, I've got to show you the office and, everyone. And Carlos, thank you so much. I'm so glad we finally did this, but please come visit me.
My pleasure, and we'll do for sure.
Okay, good.
Thank you, everyone, for staying tuned and watch more of the Talent Pieces podcast. Bye for now.